Look out for maps with the news in just a moment. But before that, hello, good morning, and here's your message. Once there was a farmer who lived next door to a hunter. Every night, the hunter's dogs would jump over the fence into the farmer's yard and attack his sheep, often wounding, occasionally killing. The farmer would go around to the hunter's place the following day, complaining, yelling at his neighbor, and screaming insults at him until the farmer was blue in the face. But the hunter, he couldn't be bothered. The following night, the dogs would be straight over the fence and into the farmer's yard again. After losing one sheep too many, the farmer went up to the city to see his friend, the judge, for some advice. The judge listened to his friend's peculiar problem and gave him some peculiar advice. Now, with a big smile on his face, the farmer returned home, and that evening, he went over to the hunter's house again. "Good evening," he said when the door was opened. "You know, I feel bad about how much I've been complaining lately, so I decided to make amends. Here are some pets for your two daughters." And with that, he produced two adorable little lambs. The hunter's daughters went crazy with excitement over their cute new companions. That night, the hunter locked the dogs in the garage to prevent them hurting his daughter's lambs. The following day, he built cages for them, and the farmer never had a problem with his neighbor's dogs ever again. You know, this story is one of my favorites because it illustrates a principle I've believed in all my adult life. It's also a principle that I apply in my job every day. Here it is. The only point of view that matters in the world is your own. And that applies to every single one of us. You know, the reason why you don't always have things your way is that people don't always see things your way. When we get frustrated, it's easy to scream at those who we believe are causing our problems. When someone crosses you in traffic or drives recklessly, you roll down your window and you yell at them. When some public figure says or does something you consider ill-advised, you go on Facebook and Twitter and you troll them. But you're not alone, you know. Everyone does it. Have you seen how footballers react when they disagree with the referee? They get so animated, violently registering their protest at the tops of their voices. But let me ask you this. How many times has a careless motorist got out of his or her car to personally apologize to you for being careless and endangering your life after you screamed at them? How many times have public figures changed their behavior just because you insulted them on Twitter? And have you ever seen a referee reverse his decision just because the players didn't like it? You see, the way to get what you want in this world is not to scream at people until it's done, but to show them your point of view. Make what matters to you matter to them. It's called influencing. And we all ought to be doing it instead of insulting. Why do we speak up about the things we don't like anyway? What is the goal we are seeking to achieve? Ultimately, we would rather have solutions to our problems, the things we are complaining about, wouldn't we? So why don't we complain in a way that would create the best chance that the people causing the problem will change their ways and the problem will be solved? So which approach is going to get that result? Insults or influence? My dear friend, today I want us to focus on influencing people. We all have problems that lie in other people's hands to solve, but the truth is, you never should relinquish the problem-solving power to those who caused your problem. I mean, they may be causing your difficulties, but how you react to these difficulties is what really matters. Don't get mad, get influential. Show them your perspective. Give them a couple of lambs of their own, and they will soon see the wisdom of locking their dogs away. My name is Kojo Yankson, and what matters to you matters to me. Good morning, Ghana.
Hello, good morning and welcome to the AM News. I am Mapita Sibidi. Now in our first story, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta says the Ghanaian economy is recovering faster than expected from the COVID-19 pandemic, presenting expenditure in advance of appropriation for January to March 2021. He said the new Patriotic Party government has reignited confidence in the Ghanaian economy in the last 4 years and accused the erstwhile National Democratic Congress government of mismanaging the economy.
Mr. Speaker, the robustness of our macroeconomic fundamentals and the efficacy of government's COVID mitigation measures have been borne out by recent indicators. According to the Bank of Ghana's survey in August 2020, consumer confidence is bouncing back strongly and is currently above pre-COVID-19 lockdown levels. Business confidence has also increased, although below pre-lockdown levels. About 95% of businesses surveyed showed strong optimism, reflecting the improving macroeconomic conditions, stability in the exchange rate, lower input prices, moderation in lending rates, and positive industry prospects. Accordingly, the projected GDP growth rate 2020 reported in July has been revised from 0.9% to 1.9% to reflect these dynamics. As the Bank of Ghana stated, the green shoot of rebound in economic activity are clearly with us. We must be thankful to God for these encouraging developments. This and other assessments provoke a degree of optimism and reveals that the swift, bold, and effective measures implemented by government have been key in quickening the pace of economic recovery. This is the competent leadership we promised under President Akufo-Addo. Indeed, the President's decisive and compassionate leadership in these challenging times have been internationally acknowledged and has added to our reputation as a Black Star of Africa. Speaker, for the purposes of the 2021 expenditure in advance of appropriation, we projected the 2021 first quarter total revenue and grants of 13.3 billion, while total expenditures, including the clearance of arrears, is projected at 24 billion. The results in the projected fiscal deficit of 10.7 billion for the period. Mr. Speaker, to support the 2021 budget and liability management, we plan to source funding from the international capital markets. This will comprise the issuance of sovereign bonds of US $3 billion, with the option to increase it to 5 billion should market conditions prove favorable. Out of the amount to be raised, 1.5 billion will be used to support the 2021 budget and 3.5 billion for liability management. Mr. Speaker, we will require an amount of 27.4 billion to carry on the services of government until the expiration of 3 months from the beginning of the 2021 financial year. The total amount is to cover government operations such as compensation of employees, ex gratia awards, interest and amortization, transfer to statutory funds, critical programs and goods and services, and capex allocations of MDAs.
Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta there. Now, the nation has in the last 3 years spent millions of dollars paying for the power that is simply not used. Though government has tried to negotiate power purchasing agreements signed by the previous NDC government, not much progress has been made. Senior Minister Yao Osofo-Mafo says the Volta River Authority is expected to increase its export of electricity to the West African sub-region as a way of saving government from doling out the $500 million needed to pay for the power. Mr. Mafo has been speaking at an event to launch the 60th anniversary celebration of VRA. There's more in the following reports.
Generator is this month commencing series of activities ahead of its 60th anniversary celebration next year. CEO Emmanuel Dakwa says the goal of VRA is to become a profitable organization.
Our overall aim is to develop VRA into a public institution but which operates with a private sector mindset. And I'd like to underscore that. Our overall aim is to develop VRA into a public institution which operates with a private sector mindset. We know it's a daunting task, but we started, and we believe we'll be successful. So on this note, I wish to commend the government, past and present executives, our dear retirees, staff, and all other stakeholders for overseeing our successful growth and expansion, making us an international electricity supplier of choice, particularly in the sub-region.
Government says it expects the power generator to play an integral role in export power in the sub-region. Senior Minister Yao Osofo-Mafo addressed the gathering.
It is my hope, and I'm calling on VRA because a special assignment, that the VRA with their rich experience will explore the export market to reduce the burden of this overcapacity for the government. And since they've already attracted the capacity to export to our neighbors, now we have excess capacity. Please increase the export ability of yours to make sure that our take and pay burden is reduced.
Government intends to complete its restructuring of the power sector by 2023. This program seeks to, in the long term, reduce the cost of electricity, and VRA, as it marks its 60th anniversary, intends to play a critical role.
Now, away from that, as the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic eases, hotels in the country are now readjusting to take visitors. Though they are now making just a fraction of their revenues before the outbreak for many, it's obvious half a loaf is better than no bread. My colleague Emmanuel Givenu visited the Sonia Hotel at East Legon to understand how the facility is coping in the face of the pandemic.
Sonia Hotel is one of such facilities that felt the brunt of the pandemic, from cutting the number of staff to slashing the cost of rooms.
Yeah, as you can see, the business is now, I will put it like closer and closer, is smaller, because a lot of people are not coming. So you have to make sure that you find a way to go around it. Now, what we did was to try and bring our room rates down. We also managed to cut down to some appreciable level the packages that we have.
General Manager of Sonia Hotel, George Ameji, said they had to re-strategize to keep the business afloat during the hard times.
We were able to manage it simply because after cutting down our staff, with a few people in the house, we realized the best thing to do is to get those staff that we have selected to work here. We have rooms available. So we decided to keep them here. They don't go back home. We feed them. We make sure that they are taken good care of.
Many experts warn of a second wave, with human behavior playing a major part. But Sonia Hotel is not taking chances, as management puts in place systems and protocols to prevent the facility from being a breeding ground for COVID-19.
During the period, we realized there are a few things we need to put in place. So we got this Veronica bucket that the Polytank did. It was a nice one. That one you use your feet to get the water to wash your hands and the soap, so you don't touch anything. And then we have these automatic dispensers. As you can see, they are all over. At every entrance, all the way down to the conference room, you will find them. The restaurant. The front office, we have even two, in fact three. There are three over there. Anywhere you pass, at least, you will see one. So after washing, you get in, you still have to use a dispenser. And so we make sure that these things are all around. We also have alcohol type that even if some people feel the other one is a bit sticky, but the alcohol type is lighter. So you can use that one. So immediately you enter, you meet somebody with the alcohol one also to help. If you're okay with it, you say no. If you're not, okay.
In the heart of East Legon lies this exquisite 2-star hotel, just a few minutes walk from the ANC shopping center. Sonia Hotel has 20 rooms ranging from 1 bedroom to a suite, with some rooms featuring an in-room safe and satellite TV, as well as dining and gastronomic restaurant. The on-site restaurant specializes in local cuisines, and the facility also provides an outdoor swimming pool and a patio.
We hosted the vice president just this September, it was a 2-day conference. And so this whole place was, you know, security-wise, like I said, is super. The whole place was covered. And then, actually, we didn't know from day one that the vice president was going to come. We were not told. It was kept that way. All we know is they are coming to have a conference. It was the morning of the conference, the actual conference, that we were told that this is it. And I asked why we have a lot of soldiers and the policemen scattered around. So the liaison guy was telling me that no, it's because the vice president is coming. I said, but why didn't you tell me? He said, no, we don't do that. Security-wise, you cannot. And I agree with him. You know, so that was what happened. So I would say that's, you know, something I'm proud of. You know, we were not actually expecting that number, and the number increased because of the security that came with the vice president. The number they gave us has gone up. So we were able to handle the situation.
How did that make you feel?
Proud.
Vice President.
Proud. I was so proud of it.
With Sonia Hotel, customers are treated as kings and queens. It is no surprise prominent personalities such as the Vice President of Ghana patronize this facility. Well, for royal treats from home, Sonia Hotel is the best bet.
And that's how we end the AM News with me, Mapito CBD. The AM show continues with Mama V and Benjamin. Enjoy.
Oh, hello there again. Welcome to the review segment of our show. Thanks to Mapito CBD for the AM News. Benjamin and myself will take you through the newspapers that we have today, and then we'll also hopefully tell you what's happening in the world, internationally. Hopefully we can touch on the U.S. elections before we wrap up. Ben, you've got the Ghanaian Times, I see. Are you going to start with that?
I am, in fact, going to start with that. So this morning, well, Finance Matters, that's the first one. It says, budget for Q1 2021. Government requests 27.4 billion Ghana cedis to carry out programs, activities from January to March next year. So that's the very first one there. It also says, President condemns NPP NDC violent clash in Ododo Diodio, and a book on the coronavirus launched. Will resort to smart, responsible borrowing to address unsustainable debt regime. That's according to the NDC. It's a story I'll be delving into later on the show. But when you go to the center spread of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, it says 327,600 abortions recorded in 2017. And Mamavi, we're just, discoursing on this matter just before coming on air. Quite, a difficult pill to swallow, looking at the number of abortions. And in fact, when you look at the estimates, even the number of pregnancies per 1,000 women and how many of them are aborted, if 103 out of 194, that is staggering. And it just goes to point to the fact that a lot of people don't even know what the law says about abortions, when it is legal. For example, when you have the case of someone who has been involved in incest, rape, and even idiocy per the law. It's not what you're thinking. The basic. Well, in the law, when they refer to an idiot, it's a totally different ballgame. But on the back page, GHCCI demands 1.8 billion Ghana cedis owed contractors and others. Minister blames self-denial for increasing breast cancer fatalities. And you do know on this Healthy Thursday, we're touching on breast cancer as well. That's it for the Ghanaian Times newspaper.
Okay, so let me just follow up, because the Daily Dispatch also has got that headline on abortions. It says 200,000 abortions recorded in Ghana in 2017. Also, Tampoli to retain Gushigu for NPP, but he is not the sitting member of parliament. So, okay, well, I guess to retain for the party, but not for himself, because this will be, if he wins, then it will be the first time that he goes to parliament. Also, there's a focus on Joy FM's Israel Lai. As you well know, this year is our 25th anniversary, the multimedia group, Joy FM, to be specific. And Israel Lai is one of our longest serving members, and we put the spotlight on him this week. We thank the Daily Dispatch for telling the story. So if you missed it on television, well, you can grab the Daily Dispatch and then you can share in the Israel Lai story. Obu on sexual activity and prostate cancer, and then US elections, who is ahead, Trump or Biden? Well, it's still too early to know, right? But you can maybe.
But if you look at the polls,
as for polls,
Biden is ahead. But from the experience of 2016 and Hillary Clinton and all of that, we know that we can't be too reliant. But the only thorny bit for Trump here would be that states that are usually Republican, states that swung wildly in his favor in 2016, are now indicating, per the polls and all of that, that they are going the other way, which would be problematic, because then there are hardcore Democratic, states and all of that. If they win those and Trump struggles in his own, areas of strength, then it means he's going to have a tough time come November the 3rd.
Well, this piece is put together by Dr. Arthur Kennedy, so you might want to read it. It's on the back page of the paper, The Institutional Effects of the Trump Presidency, he puts it. So you can grab the Daily Dispatch. Very interesting stories in today's edition.
The Business Finder is the next one I'm going to. A lot of business talk, economic talk, financial talk on the back of that budget statement. Government targets 5.7% growth, pledges to revitalize, transform the economy. Then supporters to excel under the AFCFTA, that's according to the AGI. Boosts planting for food and jobs initiative. And those are some of the major stories in the Business Finder newspaper.
I'd like to do the Daily Heritage, front page of the Heritage today. School owners, parents applaud NDC for plans to include private schools in free SHS. But what I'm going to be focusing on is this story: social media attacks on churches demoralizing. That's according to Bishop Takia Boy. And that full story is on page 3. So after we go through the headlines, I'll come back and share more. Pram Beach to go high tech. Also a story of interest for me to attract tourists, according to Nene Bantama the 4th. He's given some strong assurances there. And don't look for instant gains. Reverend Ismaila advises Ghanaian youth. I still can't believe that he's 50 and he still looks like he's maybe 35 or 40. Yeah.
Maybe it's in the genes, not the ones he wears though. But
yeah.
Some people have some very good genes. I know somebody who's 50 plus, and I mean, if you met him, you'd think he was not a day older than 30.
Ooh.
And those are quite some good genes. And the person tells me it runs in the family. So would that we all had such genes. Looking so nice.
There's a very disturbing story in the center spread of the Daily Heritage about a boy, 4-year-old, who drowned in the gutter. So he tried to cross the gutter with some other persons, including his sibling. And, the water just carried him away. There was an eyewitness, didn't see exactly that happened, but he rescued one of the boys, who now said to him that, oh, my brother was carried away by the water. Very sad incident there, happening in the community in the Kwabre East Municipal of the Ashanti region.
Details was just a water body, or was it on the back of some rains?
Okay, it didn't say exactly.
Right.
It didn't say if it was because it was raining and so the gutter was full. But you can read on to the point where I read to, it didn't indicate that.
Right.
All right, on the back page, GFA briefs clubs ahead of league start. November is just around the corner, and clubs have been briefed on match day protocols ahead of the start of the 2020-2021 Ghana Premier League season. We don't want what happened in the Black Stars come to be happening as soon as we start our own. We don't want people recording cases of coronavirus, so we hope that they stick to the protocols and it's tight. That's it for the Daily Heritage.
Let's do some more business news before I come to some politics. Wrap it up with that. But the Business and Financial Times this morning focusing on energy. And yesterday you were in the thick of things at the Kempinski Hotel. VRA looks to digitization electric vehicles for future growth as it launches 60th anniversary. It was quite an event that was held at Kempinski Hotel yesterday.
I'm actually looking forward to what they roll out because the anniversary itself, the 60th birthday itself, if you like, is next year in April.
Yeah. Anyway, so that story there. There's also government confirms takeover of Airtel Tigo. And Bharti Airtel, you know, the owner basically of those shares has decided to move out of the Ghanaian market. And so they are selling off those shares, and government is temporarily taking them on. The worth of that, $25 million. But Oforiatta asks for 27 billion Ghana cedis financing for 2021 first quarter budget. He plans to borrow up to 5 billion from the bond market and pins the economy's future on 100 billion Ghana cares. Then there's also Kwamina Asumaning made next Stanbic chief executive as our own friend Al-Hassan and Dani. I call him our friend because he's had quite a relationship with the media, the breakfast meetings and all of that. So he's been one of those stellar ones when it comes to engaging the media. That's why I call him our friend.
And very knowledgeable in his field as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very. Well, he retires on November the 30th. On the back page, Olam launches...
Can I just say the good thing about the person taking over has been a member of his core team for almost 10 years. Talk about successive planning or succession, you know, because we talk about, you have a good leader who is leaving and everybody's thinking, who takes over? Because he hasn't prepared anybody. This sounds like somebody that he's prepared to take over from him, which is a good thing.
A very good thing, actually. So many things are running through my mind on the back of what you've said, but I'll hold my horses. Olam launches Made in Ghana rice brand locally. And that's it for the Business and Financial Times.
Let's do the Daily Guide newspaper. The banner headline, police invite two Odododio candidates, and that's Neelante Bannerman and Neelante Vanderpoy. But I do remember Neelante Vanderpoy telling me on the back of, you know, the incident that happened with the clashes and what you reported on, because you went there, the Monday after the incident, that he had been invited to the police. In fact, I think when I was talking to him, he was already at the police station. So I'm not sure about this invitation, but this is the PRO of the Greater Accra Regional Police speaking to the Daily Guide and saying that they extended an invitation to the two candidates. But Neelante Bannerman had said to the police that because the president was visiting the constituency, particularly because he is the chairman of the Premix Fuel Secretariat at the Ministry of Fisheries. No, this is the NPP's candidate explaining to the police how or why he couldn't make it early enough and he needed time. And that's why he's yet to report.
Because Neelante Vanderpoy also said that, interacting with us, he mentioned that out of respect for the fact that the president was coming there as a member of parliament, because he was going to hold a presser on that day, out of respect, he wouldn't hold the presser so that the president can come, do what he has to, and then the following day, which was actually yesterday, he would have the presser. And just to chip in on that, yesterday when Neelante Vanderpoy spoke to us on Campaign Trail on Joy Prime, he actually indicated that those two who were apprehended by the police were actually members of his party, and suggesting in a way that there's some subtle targeting even when it comes to the work that the police is doing. But definitely on the back of what Neelante Bannerman said, that the matter, a complaint had been lodged at the police station, the Jamestown police station. You would expect that, you know, both parties would be invited.
Yeah, okay. So according to this story, we would see maybe, but the police also doesn't give a deadline. It's just an open invitation. So we're not sure when the two candidates, if this tells us they're going together at the same time, I'm not sure, but you can read on the rest of the story in the paper today. Back on the front page, government requests 27.4 billion Ghana cedis in post-election budgets. Government laws VRA's efforts, don't underrate COVID-19. That's Bishop Dr. Charles Abban given that caution there. Where's the story? Ghanaians have been advised not to ignore the safety protocols needed to combat COVID-19. I just tried to look at the statistics as we have it today. I realized that we have 488 active cases. If you look at France, well, elsewhere they're really battling with it. France is going to be closing down.
Right.
They're going to
shutting
down again. So it's not a funny thing at all. If you look at the US, I think they recorded about 1,000 deaths yesterday or so. So, you know, the fight is still on with COVID-19. We are fortunate, but it doesn't mean that we should ignore the protocols. All right, that's it for the Daily Guide.
And one interesting thing I'll just add, you know, herd immunity doesn't even really work when it comes to COVID-19, what the scientists have been telling us. A lot of those, you know, some diseases like chickenpox, you get it and you have immunity, you develop some resistance to it. So it's very unlikely that you'll get it again. But with COVID-19, even those who develop, you know, those antibodies over time, you start shedding the antibodies. So it's quite a curious ailment, which
There's
is why
still a lot we don't know about it.
So much more that we don't know about it. But the Daily Statesman this morning, I did promise to wrap up with politics. Ghana and US 2020 elections have no similarities. Kojo Ponkroma, you know, saying that, well, let's see how things go. Ewutu Senya NDC chairman executives defect to NPP. About 100 of them, from what we hear, or is it 9 of them, including the former chairman. Then no turning back. Ken Ofori-Atta urges Ghanaians to reject incompetent leaders, and Akufo-Addo has cleared 2.6 billion Ghana Cedi Mahama debt to the VRA, says Osafo Mafo. Interesting there. You were right there with him yesterday. But wrapping up with some sporting news, Barcelona's president, Josep Maria Bartomeu, actually resigns, and there's Christian Coleman, the world record holder when it comes to 100 meters. He's been banned for 2 years for missing drug tests. In fact, he's missed 3 in a row. But if you listen to his explanation, it would appear that he might be actually, you know, contesting that decision by the governing body. So those are my final stories. It's a wrap.
All right, let me do the Daily Graphic. I haven't done the graphic yet, so that's the last paper. Front page of the Daily Graphic. Government to spend 27.4 billion Ghana cedis, covers up to March 2021. MDA's debt owed VRA cleared. Comes with a picture of Mr. Emmanuel Chum Enchidako, CEO of the Volta River Authority. And then graphic launches Ashanti Regional Spotlight today. Honest Kofi Bedu. They've got the daily spotlight, what they're launching in Ashanti. There's a special pullout in the paper today. You can check it out. And then in the center spread proper, which is still on Ashanti, Swame Magazine, the lifeline of Kumasi in pictures. Very interesting, very colorful. You can take a look. Is it a Simati Turtle 1? And it's a vehicle designed and produced by, is it Smido? Do you have the center spread to show? Can they see the vehicle like a?
That's
like
interesting. That's exactly. That's a very interesting.
Yeah, you're gonna see it
one. And this actually, you know, it brings to mind, you know, Nkrumah had some projects with regard to constructing vehicles right here in Ghana. Under Kutu Echampong, some of those came to bear. Adom, I think one of them was called Adom, actually, Grace, and there was another one, similar one. You wonder when you look at Kumasi Mezin. That's how I hear they pronounce it in Kumasi. Mezin. And how far we failed to come, it's rather interesting, you know, but that's a development there. What's the name of the vehicle again?
Simati Turtle 1.
Simati Turtle 1.
Yeah,
sounds interesting.
Rather
interesting.
Yeah. Okay, back page. ABL organizes training workshop for 23 drivers. Ghana Swiss Red Cross support health delivery in 6 districts.
Right. So I guess we can delve into the papers now. I will do all my stories from the Ghanaian Times newspaper this morning. 3 of them, 2 tying into financial matters and the other one on abortions that I just want to put out there. So first one says government requests 27.4 billion Ghana cedis. I'll not read too much from here because we're going to have a conversation on that later on the show. But this is to cover basically government operations such as compensation of employees. I spoke about ex gratia payments to be made. There's also interest and amortization payments, transfers to statutory funds, critical programs, goods and services, and much more. If you're wondering what exactly this complex is, later on when we engage, those who are going to be speaking to us, we'll delve into some of those matters when it comes to what exactly they imply. But we'll resort to smart, responsible borrowing to address unsustainable debt regime. That's according to the NDC. It's on pages 12 and 13 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. And the story says, the National Democratic Congress said it would resort to smart and responsible borrowing to address the country's unsustainable debt regime if it wins the 2020 elections. In addition, the party says it will strengthen government institutions to be able to leverage their own financial books, mobilize the needed capital for key infrastructural projects without borrowing to add to the public debt. Sami Jemfi was indicating this yesterday. A lot of fine rhetoric when it comes to these. My only concern is these promises have been made time without number. It's not the promise that is bad. It's about the implementation. If you'd recall, you know that 63 years down the line, within these last 4 years, we've actually borrowed almost an equivalent, in fact, even more than before the first, 59 years. So you analyze these and you begin to wonder. But on this very subject, only yesterday, I saw a post on Facebook by Dr. Steve Manteya, former chairperson of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. Yeah. And I actually shared it. This is what he says. Debt in itself isn't a bad thing, provided one can show how prudently the borrowed money has been used. It's called accountability. Are we getting accountability? Well, the verdict, that's in your bosom. So those are the two stories I'll do. I think after you're done, then I'll come to the abortion.
No, go ahead with the abortion.
Right, so this one says a total of 327,600 abortion cases were recorded in 2017, out of which more than 200,000, representing 71% of the cases, were through illegal means. Now, the high incidence of illegal abortions were recorded despite the fact that safe abortion was permissible under 4 stated conditions under the country's law. So here's what you should take note of. Legally, rape, incest, fatal abnormality or disease or defilement of a female idiot. And in the eyes of the law, a female who doesn't have, a proper, her mental faculties are not in the proper place, may fit into this. Sometimes there are debilitating illnesses. And so for all these people, suffering these conditions, abortions are actually legal. Yet it appears people are not taking advantage of that. It is those who don't fit the category who are actually getting these abortions. And interestingly, I'll just wrap up. It says nationally in 2017, an estimated 194 pregnancies were recorded per 1,000 women aged 15 to 49 in the country, of which 103 were unintended. So it appears we all ought to be very careful when it comes to this business of abortions and all of that. But I mean, you should know that there are certain things you do and a child, an infant could be generated out of that. So you might want to take the precautionary measures, because if you look at the number, 103, 194 out of 1,000 pregnant, 103 of them unintended.
But the thing is, when it also happens to you, it would be good to walk into a proper facility. There's the family planning units, right, which is all over in almost every hospital, where you can get good advice and then you can take it from there. Right. Sometimes you can't blame the people who get pregnant. If it's your child and it's happened, you won't go back to how you didn't take precautions and that kind of thing. Yeah. But you want to point them to the right place to at least seek advice. Because sometimes when it happens, you're not thinking correctly. Yeah. You're just confused. Yeah. And you're thinking, if I get rid of it, then I'll be fine.
It's the best solution.
But if you were to cool down, get somebody to talk to, you will probably either not make that option, or if you're going to take that option, it will be a safer way of doing it.
You would think twice. Yeah. And if you consider, for example, our Kayayes and what they go through, a lot of them being raped and all of that, even where they stay, people pounce on them and all of that, then you'd realize that for some people, it's through no fault of theirs.
Absolutely. So it's not a shame to get pregnant unprepared. Just seek the right advice when it happens. Be bold and walk into a facility and open up and tell them what's happening to you. There's a very interesting story in the Daily Dispatch. I find it interesting. It's related to the campaign, but there's an MP who is promising 1 laptop, 1 teacher. And
did you say one teacher?
Yes, one teacher.
So every teacher
laptop.
will get a laptop.
Yes, and this is in Navrongo. And I find the reasoning rather very convincing, if you like, because he says as part of effort to better education, he's promised to provide laptops and tablets for teachers to facilitate teaching and learning, which is good, but also intends to provide incentives for teachers who are posted to remote and deprived areas to encourage them to give out their bests. And that's why I think it's a very good reasoning behind it. That's Samson Gombu Chiragia. He comes up against the MPP's Tagoba Abayage, who unseated the incumbent MP for Navrongo, who's the aviation minister. That was a huge one. So that's the NDC's candidates for Navrongo making these promises, which I found fascinating. I thought I'd highlight on that.
You know what fascinates me about that? Recently, when Winston Damwa was in Boku, ballot box, that matter came up. And one of the speakers actually raised the issue that another MP, I think he was making reference to the North Tong member of parliament, Okujeto Ablakwa, that he had done it, and why was his member of parliament not doing that? Because they lack, computers. So you may take it for granted, but in some parts of the country, the northern belt is pretty deprived in some of these areas. Internet connection, access to such facilities. So
I bet teachers even in the greater region, in the major cities would also appreciate something like this.
But some places more than others, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there was a story about the Reverend Bishop Takia Boy, who says social media attacks on churches are demoralizing, to pastors, if you like. He's referring to actors playing false prophets and causing women to remove their underwear while shaving them as an abominable thing against the church. So sometimes we see these things on social media, and people just quickly draw the conclusion that it's a proper pastor that's doing this, and then they start, insulting and doing all manner of things. And so he says he's particularly speaking to the church and saying that when you see things on social media, don't just conclude immediately. Take your time and appreciate the story. Sometimes they're not exactly true. Okay, I think we're done here. You can go to myjoyonline.com where we have plenty of stories. When we come back from sports, and Oreku is presenting sports today in the comfort of his office, it will be a good view, I promise you. When we come back, Benjamin will be going through the key highlights of yesterday's presentation and talking to our guests on the realities of some of the things that the finance minister said in Parliament. Are we, cutting our coat according to our size? Are we spending more than we have and, building on debts? That conversation will be right after sport. And of course, we're talking stroke, and then we're talking breast cancer also here on our show. So very interesting conversations to come. First, though, is Oreku Ampofo with sports.
Mr. Speaker, the robustness of our macroeconomic fundamentals and the efficacy of government's COVID mitigation measures have been borne out by recent indicators. According to the Bank of Ghana's survey in August 2020, consumer confidence is bouncing back strongly and is currently above pre-COVID-19 lockdown levels. Business confidence has also increased, although below pre-lockdown levels. About 95% of businesses surveyed showed strong optimism, reflecting the improving macroeconomic conditions, stability in the exchange rate, lower input prices, moderation in lending rates, and positive industry prospects. Accordingly, the projected GDP growth rate 2020 reported in July has been revised from 0.9% to 1.9% to reflect these dynamics. As the Bank of Ghana stated, the green shoot of rebound in economic activity are clearly with us. We must be thankful to God for these encouraging developments. This and other assessments provoke a degree of optimism and reveals that the swift, bold, and effective measures implemented by government have been key in quickening the pace of economic recovery. This is the competent leadership we promised under President Akufo-Addo. Indeed, the President's decisive and compassionate leadership in these challenging times have been internationally acknowledged and has added to our reputation as the Black Star of Africa.
Well, that was Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta yesterday on the floor of Parliament, actually delivering the budget statement practically for the first quarter of 2021. That's the way it is done, because you never know which party is going to be in power, but at least planning, financial planning, must continue for the coming year. Well, on the back of that, we're going to break it down, break down the salient matters to bite-sized pieces for all of us, because usually when the budget statements are read, a lot of us don't comprehend all the conundrums, the complexes when it comes to finance. We're joined now by Dr. Lord Mensah, Senior Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. He's going to be breaking down some of these matters for us. Dr. Mensah, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on AM Talk.
Yeah, good morning, sir, and good morning to our viewers.
Great. So we're focusing on Ghana's fiscal policy. And I'll start with this. What for you are the major takeaways from yesterday's budget statement? Of course, we can talk about, the issuance of bonds, something I'm going to throw at you later, among, myriad other, matters that came up. But for you, what are the major takeaways?
Well, clearly you could see, the government still in focus of, spending on infrastructure. Still having the anticipation of going into the next year with an aggressive investment in infrastructure. And then also to ensure that, gradually we win ourselves off, the COVID, menace that we had, which has distorted our plans in terms of the pre-COVID, ambitions that we had when it comes to, budgeting. So clearly, I see it to be a budget that there seems to be an acceptance that our financial standing is not that okay. So therefore, if we go forward, we should be able to spend prudently. But then in the end, the areas of spending are mainly on infrastructure, the continuation of the government previous policies that they've been rolling out in terms of agriculture, in terms of the social rented programs that they've been rolling out. But then what I'm worried about is the huge budget deficit that comes at the heels of, when we got a caution from IMF that we are heading towards a point where our finances are getting close to, a point where we are more or less exhausting our, debt service capacity. So effectively, we have to be a bit, careful. Now we have a budget that we're looking at possibly the first quarter of the year. I was expecting that, the aggressive posture, which an investment into infrastructure and all those things comes in, would have been something that we might overlook, but rather think about the statutory, payment like salaries and interest payment and all those. And clearly, if you look at the revenue targeted by the finance minister in the first quarter of next year, and then only the interest payment alone takes more than 50% of the revenue target. I think you look at the budget clearly, the appendix, you will see, a revenue target of over about 10 billion Ghana cedis for the first quarter. But then we have interest obligations of about 7 billion Ghana cedis. So you ask yourself, all those things outlined in the budget, for the first quarter, how are we going to finance, all those things? And you come to a point where you see financing of about, 10 billion, over and over in the first quarter. And then financing sources, we're looking at possibly borrowing, and we know our debt level as we speak now. So if you were to manage, the economy in the first, quarter of the year, just after the election, that we know what is going on in this election. Obviously, you would have been a bit, conserved. Just meet your statutory payment, and then you can project, better when we dive deeper into the year.
Now, Dr. Mensah, you've touched a bit on our debt, and I just want you to walk us through how sustainable or unsustainable our debt is currently. In recent times, we've heard from the IMF talking about the risk factors when it comes to our debt stock, and we've also, seen those projections when it comes to end of year by the close of the fourth quarter, and how we could be hitting 76.7% when it comes to our debt to GDP portfolio. How precarious a situation is it that we find ourselves in, especially now that we're going to spend an additional 27.4 billion Ghana cedis in 2021, at least in planning for the first quarter?
Yeah, I think if you look at what is happening on the ground, clearly our debt level seemed a bit alarming. But then in the end, we should understand that as a country, our resources are still intact. But then the reason why I think we got the warning from IMF was, the aggressive posture, the way and manner, we approach our expenditure. And that is where, the IMF came in with something that they need to worry about. If you listen to the audio very well, the video, I had an opportunity to listen to it carefully. The IMF indicated that we still have the resources. All that we have to do is that we control our expenditure. We have issues with revenue generation. So all that you have to do in managing your debt level, you give yourself about maybe 5 years where you consistently reduce your expenditure to a certain level. And by so doing, you gradually wean yourself of this, problem that we are almost getting ourselves into. So effectively, they gave us a solution. But then how do we, adapt to those solutions? It depends on, the government of the day and how they want to satisfy their obligations as far as infrastructure delivery is concerned. So that is clearly something that we need to worry about. But then in the end, the solution is at hand. It depends on how we position ourselves, as far as our expenditure is concerned.
Now, there also is this matter of a sovereign bond issuance. That is apart from the 27.4 billion that the finance minister is requesting ahead of 2021. Now, we're looking at between $3 and $5 billion and different projections for that sum of money. Of course, it will be consequent on how favorable the market is. Break down for us, Dr. Mensah, this entire enterprise of bond issuance and whether, in fact, it is the way to go, whether that is going to favor us going back on the market vis-a-vis our debt positioning.
Well, when you talk about issuing debt to finance your fiscal, gap, you have to look at interest rate, the cost of, borrowing, and the coupon rate that you pay. Now, with this, the cautioning from IMF indicating that our debt level is getting to a certain threshold. If we boldly go to the international market to go and borrow, we have to be ready to take on any interest rate, because the provider of the funds knows very well that your debt is getting to a point where you are likely to default. So therefore, if you issue a bond in that form, as for the market, it's open. Depends on where the investor wants to place his money. If you issue a bond, the investor will look at your history, will look at your background, whether you are in good standing to pay, and that will determine the coupon rate. But then is Ghana ready to take on any coupon rate that the investment will demand? Maybe you want to raise 3 billion. You go there, you will not get a 3 billion. You end up having about maybe 1 billion. You're still pushing on to get a 3 billion. The investor knows that you are desperate for funds. And when it happens like that, they're going to slap you with higher, interest rates. So in the end, it will end up building up more onto your debt. But let's go back into the budget in details. Clearly, you realize that the first quarter, the finance minister indicated that we want to spend, in excess of about 10 billion. Ghana cedis. Now, 10 billion Ghana cedis, if you are to take the exchange rate into consideration, the dollar equivalent of the 10 billion Ghana cedis, I don't think will be the 3 billion, between 3 billion and the 5 billion that has been indicated. And clearly, from that point, you will see that the appetite for borrowing is there. And if the appetite of borrowing is there, then it means that you are ready to take on any interest rate. So, of course, we should expect, high cost of borrowing going forward. The market is open. I mean, the investor is prepared to give you part of his money. And let me tell you one secret. This Euro bond market is in such a way that they are always prepared to invest in Africa. Trust me, if you look at a typical bond that has been issued, parallel bond, let's say you have a bond that is going for 10 years in Europe, and you have a bond that is going for 10 years in an African environment, they are better off choosing the African environment 10-year bond, because for the first 2 years, just two coupon payment alone is more than 15 years of bond that is being held by the European market, looking at the interest rate that we've been paying them. So they are more comfortable. Anytime we go there, we can get money, but the question will be, at what cost are we getting the money for?
Now, even as you talk about at what cost, how prudent is it? Because yes, the European community and all of those, they would be willing to give the money because, mind you, of course, when you have money, there are ways of investing the money. And when you put it out there, then you can get returns on the money. But how prudent is it, looking at our debt positioning, looking at, even the fact that we have to finance our budgets time and again with resources coming from the outside? How prudent is it, initiating this move at this point in time, even after what we are mopping up internally?
Well, I would say that it might not be prudent at this time to think about going on the market because of the, IMF, warning that came, and because of, our economic structure as we speak now, and then looking at how we're going into election year and with that swelling debt. I mean, the investor who is out there is tracking all those things, and it's a public information which is available, and they are prepared to use that, to gain more from the country. So effectively, I would say the timing might be wrong. That is why I started my submission by telling you that, at least for the first quarter, we should have been a bit conserved, and look at how, as the years go deeper, as the year goes deeper into in the middle or maybe the last quarter, we can, see the prospect, and then possibly we can engage the Eurobond market again. So for me, I think it might not be prudent in terms of timing, and then in terms of, the economic structure of the country as we speak now.
Dr. Mensah, now let's juxtapose, let's put side by side finances and the impact of COVID-19. Now, COVID-19 has slammed economies across the globe, including our own, and we're all grappling, from the harsh effects of it. If you follow what the finance minister said with regard to COVID-19 and how much, we even forecast, the impact would be, and with regard to spending as well, what would you say, or as a forecast, expectations should be when it comes to 2021, the first quarter? What impact should we expect on the back of COVID-19 in financial terms?
Well, we should understand that Ghana, we are as a country, but we're not an island. Most of our revenue coming from how we get integrated to the globe. And, even though COVID impact in Africa might not necessarily be that extreme, but then our dependence in the global, market will give you the signal that whatever decision you are taking, going into 2021, you have to be careful, because as the winter is rolling in, we have a second wave of this COVID coming up, and that is going to stall a lot of, economic activities, across the globe again. So effectively going into 2021, I was expecting that at least the aggressive posture in terms of delivering some freebies and all those to our citizens, we would have, cut them down and be conserved as much as we can. If I say conserved as much as we can, spend as, you can earn, so that at least you live within your means for some time.
Now, on the back of just how much we've been spending, which you just spoke of, and maybe trimming our coats according to the cloth, the size of cloth we have, the NDC has been talking about, the frequent borrowing, and it has been saying that we ought to do smart borrowing. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that we're hearing of smart borrowing. How exactly do we go about this smart borrowing? Because it appears the train is running amok when it comes to borrowing, and if we are not careful, we could be, out there in the thick of things in a very sad position. So what do we do to get to the point of smart borrowing? Are we doing that now? And if not, what are the mechanisms we should put in place in economic terms?
Well, I think it has to do with the sacrifice that our current generation is prepared to sacrifice for the future. I think if you look at our debt management, we are almost exhausting all the possibilities. The only thing that is left is to engage the investor and how we can renegotiate, And you can see clearly that administration upon administration comes in. We've heard of debt reprofiling. Sometimes you borrow in the long term to satisfy some short-term obligations so that you prolong, your debt financing from medium term to long term. We've heard of all these things. But then clearly, what we've not touched on, I would say, is that why are we worried of pushing all our debt into the future for our, the young ones to come and bear the brunt of this debt? Are we prepared as a country, me and you, as we sit here, some of the benefits that we get, that we think we can sacrifice for it to pay off our debt? Are we prepared to do that? We shouldn't always push our debt. Sometimes the current generation needs to take some pain, in terms of austere measures to ensure that at least, our debt is lowered to a certain level. But we are not doing that. We keep on, moving it further and further, sometimes 30 years, sometimes, and we are happy. We seem to be happy with it. But trust me, that might not necessarily be the only solution. The current generation need to bear some pain, to lower these debt levels.
When you speak of the pain, what exactly do you mean?
Well, some sacrifices, we see expenditure going into some free monies, that have been given out, expenditure going into other things like maybe, should I say, free SHS, expenditure going into things that we know some citizens can, afford, expenditure going into areas that, we're supposed to prioritize, in terms of expenditure. But then we leave it open and more driven politically, which at the end of the day, sometimes we don't really get the impact, So effectively, taking the pain means set priorities in your spending, and at the same time to make sure that investment goes into areas that you can easily get returns. Trust me, if you are driving on a certain road that the road does not need asphalt, but maybe you can manage with, let me say, put it in trees, surfacing for some time, maybe the next 5 years. Why don't you do that? Save some money to pay off some debt somewhere. Going forward. You can easily manage in that direction. So let's push some of the the pain to the current generation.
Right. Now, I want to tease out your thoughts on something I stumbled on only yesterday. It has to do with the former chairman of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, Dr. Steve Manteyao. And he said in a Facebook post that it's not debt, the debt stock per se, that is the problem. It is the fact that we perhaps are not using what we acquire in the right ways, because when you do that, then there is accountability. Does that suffice as, an explanation for borrowing ad infinitum without any cessation if you're using it for the right purposes? Do you agree with Dr. Steve Manteyao?
I do 100%. I do 100%. You see, borrowing, every country borrows. Sometimes somebody will tell you that you have 100%. Some countries have more than 100% of their GDP in terms of their debt and all those. But clearly, these are countries that have infrastructure. Countries that every now and then, if it's a railway line that they've used that debt, for, you realize that anytime the rails passes with passengers, with goods, you could see that the tendency to pay the debt is very, very high. Now, most of the time, we don't worry too much on your debt to GDP. You have to look at the revenue that you are generating. I gave you an indication in my earlier submission that about more than 50%, because the finance minister, indicated that, he's looking at excess of financing about 10 point something billion. But then in the end, our interest payment alone is 7 billion and over, which is telling you that we are using more than 50%. A situation where you've invested this money that you took or you got from investors in a form of debt, a situation where you put them in roads, right? That you've placed a toll on the road, and that road can stand alone and pay for itself, all right? In that case, you're not afraid to take on debt. Now, have we asked ourselves whether, the debt that we've accrued over the years, they are in projects that can be self-financing? That is where the problem is. If you take on debt and it comes to do project that the project can stand alone, after you finish paying your debt, be it 13 years or 15 years, the asset is still in existence, servicing the people and the government still benefiting from it. But in this country, the problem is what we show for our debt. We cannot easily pinpoint, a project that can go all the way 30 years that we are pushing our debt to. We've been pushing the debt further 30 years and over. And trust me, if it gets to the time to pay, now you can think of paying the coupons or paying the interest. But then when it gets to the time to pay for the principal, it will be a problem for the future generation.
Dr. Mensah, I will wrap up on this bit here with this question. It's a rather curious one, but I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the finance minister. If you were presenting this, economic statement, finance statement for the first quarter of 2021, per all that you have seen, per all that you've read from the budget, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, I wouldn't have promised infrastructure. I wouldn't have promised things that I know very well that, I can hold on for some time, at least for some, because now we are still on the grounds with infrastructure. Let's see the finishing point of those structures, and then we can continue to do more. We don't promise new structures when you have existing ones, you are still struggling with your debt. So I would have looked at just statutory payment in the first quarter of the year.
Dr. Lord Mensah, thank you very much for engaging us this morning. You are always, a wealth of, information. Thank you for joining us this morning on AM Talk, and thank you for your time. That is Dr. Lord Mensah of the University of Ghana Business School. Now, today, actually, World Stroke Day, we're going to be talking about disease prevalence issues and how strokes are on the increase. It's the second leading cause of death globally, but how do we grapple with it, especially in a country like ours where health connects as we talk about strokes and their impact health-wise in our country. Don't you forget, we're also going to, on the Healthy Thursday bit, we'll be talking about breast cancer as well. Do stay tuned for the rest of the show.
For staying with us here on the AM show. Now let's talk stroke. It's World Stroke Day today. I have guests in the studio. There's a guest joining us via Zoom. The prevalence of the disease is increasing, and it's the second leading cause of death globally. Very important that we talk about it. And when we introduced our show today, I said somebody close to you somehow may have gotten stroke sometime. And we all shared our various stories. So it's very common. You find it very close to you. But what can you do if somebody that you love suddenly goes down with stroke? My guest in the studio, Dr. Benjamin Sarkodie, is a vascular specialist and interventional radiology with the University of Ghana Medical School. And Dr. Augustina Chawe-Fairley is president-elect of the African Academy of Neurology, consultant neurologist at the 37 Military Hospital, the Leicester Hospital and Fertility Center, and Eurocare Advanced Diagnostics and Health Center. I hope I said everything right.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here. And then joining us via Zoom will be Dr. Albert Akpalo. There you are, sir. He's a senior lecturer, School of Medicine and Dentistry, College of Health Sciences, University of Ghana. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning.
Great. So I want to ask...
Stroke Day.
Sure. I want to ask what stroke is, but first of all, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. This used to be like an adult kind of disease, correct? We used to see older persons suffer stroke. Is it the same story today?
So it's still a disease that the majority of individuals who get stroke are adults. However, there is stroke that can happen in children, in young adults. But the majority of patients will be the older adult, the elderly adult.
Okay. Dr. Akwalu, can you explain what stroke is, first of all?
Yes, thank you very much. So as Dr. Chawe said, stroke affects across the ages, but stroke really is a neurological condition, an acute neurological condition, which is evidenced by lots of things. Weakness, everybody knows stroke, your face twists, your hand becomes weak, but it can affect any part of your body, your eyes, your motor system, your spinal cord, your vision, your memory, your balance. So all these are acute events, but you have to have objective evidence of an injury to the brain or an infarction or hemorrhage to the brain by a CT scan. So the new definition of stroke means that you have all these symptoms that we know or signs that we know, but you need objective evidence of a CT scan. So we use the term time is brain. When you see these things, we have an acronym called FAST. When you see these things, your face is twisted to one side, you can't move your arm, your speech becomes slurred, or I begin to speak and my speech starts going, they know that something is happening and the team is time, go to somewhere where you can have urgent help. So in a nutshell, that's what stroke is. Stroke affects across the ages. Unfortunately, we are seeing it a lot of young people. So, and it affects 1 in 4 adults worldwide.
Okay.
So the theme for this is do not be the one. So do not be that 1 in 4.
Okay, but Dr. Akwalu, are there always early signs?
No, so we have what we call silent strokes. So these are the most dangerous ones. So silent strokes, you may have some memory loss, you may have some speech loss, some visual side, or you don't have any physical outward signs. So we do a CT scan. So that is the danger. So everybody must know the subtle symptoms and signs of stroke. That's part of the education we are doing. But we must know the symptoms and signs of stroke. And when you see it, you must go immediately. People go through all sorts of channels. I know we are a prayerful nation, but as you are going to pray, go to hospital. As you are going to the herbalist, go to hospital. As you are going to whoever you are going to see, go to the hospital and do whatever you want to do alongside. But you need urgent intervention.
So Dr. Chawe and Dr. Sarkodie in the studio, can the damage be reversed somehow? Can you be better again? Maybe you can take it and then she can come in.
Sure. So the good thing is that with increasing knowledge and technology these days, we do have a good window period within which we can reverse and to a large extent limit the damage caused to the brain. There are 2 main ways of treating this. There's something we call thrombolysis, which means you give a medication to try and melt any clots up in the brain and then open it up so that the blood flow can be restored again. And also you have other methods where people bleed. We mentioned that there are 2 types of strokes, infarctive and bleeding. So bleeding also, when you know the cause, like there's a brain aneurysm or something that has ruptured, you can fix it. So when you do some of these things, you have a big chance of reversing some of the consequences of the stroke. So for instance, if you present to hospital within 6 hours, there are certain procedures we can do, there are certain medications we can give and be able to reverse it. But the longer the period of before intervention, the more loss of neurons in the brain and the more damage you tend to have.
Okay. So Dr. Chawe, anything you want to add? And then I also would want to ask if we can even prevent it.
Okay. So I would unfortunately be the stick in the mud here and be very careful when we use the word reversing the consequences of a stroke. The best way to reverse or reduce the impact of stroke is to prevent it. So yes, there are definitely things that can be done to reduce the likelihood of developing a stroke in anyone. Because even if you are fortunate enough to have thrombolysis or thrombectomy, those are the things that reduce the disability after stroke, there are still subtle things that are left behind. And so that's the whole purpose of the slogan, still don't be the one to get a stroke, even if we can reverse a lot of what happens to you during the stroke. The mainstay of the prevention of stroke, and this is done also after a stroke, is lifestyle changes. So physical activity, taking care of the diseases that underline the stroke. So for example, hypertension, treating the hypertension, making sure your blood pressure is at goal, treating high levels of cholesterol if that is the issue for you. If you are diabetic, making sure your diabetes is under control. But the main cornerstone is lifestyle modification. So you can take all your medications before
okay,
and still after. Yeah. So for all of us, because we are all potential, as long as you have a brain, which is all of us, you are potentially a person who can develop a stroke. So all of us need to do these things to make sure we eat healthily, lots of fruits and vegetables, exercise.
And the family, everybody is involved in managing the stroke. So everybody takes a concerted effort to get you well. So typically, if you come to our stroke unit, by within 7 to 10 days, we should get you back home to what we call some functional independence. So if the stroke affects the whole of your right side, and that's what you use to write, it's going to take time. So it takes up to 3 months, 6 months, up to a year to get full recovery in quotes for something that we can reverse. Otherwise, you have to manage with the disability that you have, and that does not make you a different person. But the problems we have is that people are getting second and third stroke. So that is where we have to bring the lifestyle changes, reduce stress. Okay, reduce stress. Ghanaians like stress. We do not like to rest and take breaks. So we need to be happy. Just being happy helps to prevent strokes. And that's work that we've done in Ghana and Nigeria shows that eating green leafy vegetables, physical activity, reducing alcohol intake. We don't have much of a smoking problem. And there's something called atrial fibrillation. I'm sure Dr. Chawe, Dr. Sarkodie will talk about, where your heart beats irregularly. We need to catch these things. So these are hidden things. But despite all the things that we do, people still go ahead and have stroke. If you have a family history of stroke, then go and start checking your lipids, your hypertension, and all the other risk factors. So yes, we can manage stroke. But note that if you don't come on time, your blood pressure is not controlled, and you have a very bad, a huge stroke showed by the scan that you have, your mortality is 50%. And of those who survive, another 50% will have another stroke within 3 months, within 6 months, within a year. So the statistics are not too good. So the main thing we can do is to prevent it from happening in the first place. And if it comes, manage the problems we have with the multidisciplinary team that we have.
Great. So Dr. Sarkodie, Dr. Chawe, Dr. Kpalu says, reduce the stress and be happy. But that's a period where, because I've had a very close person who got stroke, and all she wanted to do was to die because she couldn't do the normal things. Very active person who suddenly couldn't do anything unless somebody supported her. So that's a very difficult period. So my question is, how do you help yourself, and who can help you? Who do you call?
So as Dr. Kpalu mentioned, it is definitely a multidisciplinary team that assists in the management of someone who's had a stroke. First and foremost, having had a devastating event like a stroke is already by itself a source of despair. Yeah? But that said, having had a stroke by itself, whether or not you acknowledge that it's a devastating event to you, increases your risk for depression. And that's where the multidisciplinary aspect of the team taking care of you when you have a stroke comes in. And definitely we need work with a psychologist. So there are medications that can be given to help manage the depression, but it's also work with the psychologist, talking through things, learning to adapt and cope with the situation that you've been given. So yes, there are some kinds of stresses that we can avoid. Not all stress is avoidable. But it's how you cope with that stress that makes a huge difference. And there the psychologist is very important.
Okay, so Dr. Sarkodie, who do you immediately call?
Well, we have a national ambulance system. There's a number which we will share on the screen. When you start to see some of the symptoms that Dr. Palu mentioned, which we have the acronym FAST, you should call one of these numbers to have the ambulance take you to the hospital immediately. In Ghana, a lot of people also rely on private transportation or taxis to the hospital. The point about reporting to hospital very early is key, and we cannot even overemphasize that point. So it's important that once people begin to see changes, like the facial deviation, you begin to feel weakness in one of your arms, you begin to have difficulty speaking and all of that, it is extremely important to start heading to the hospital. It is important that we do not also blame ourselves for some of these conditions. A lot of people who are living in stroke think that they did some bad thing to somebody, they think it's a spiritual attack, and therefore when the symptoms even begin, they don't call the hospital or they don't go to the hospital at the first time. But here we are dealing with time. Time is brain, which means that the longer you stay, the more damage you are doing to yourself. And so it's important that people call the ambulance service or they come to the hospital in their taxis or their private cars as soon as possible, because that is how we can help to reduce the disability associated with the disease.
And Dr. Chawe, just to add, if you are alone and you're feeling the signs that Dr. Akpalu talked about, what should you do?
Call somebody, anybody, and say that something is going wrong with me if you can. Or in general, I think our healthcare seeking behaviors in Ghana are a little less than they should be. But it's a good idea to have some kind of plan. Say, for example, you know you have high blood pressure. You can have a stroke without having any of these things, but it's more likely if you have high blood pressure. There should be some kind of plan in place before something happens. So there should be some sort of panic button that we should all have on our phones where you can contact someone that you rely on, and if they realize that something is wrong, they also quickly get help. But it is a very difficult thing. When you're alone, no matter where, if you can't get to the phone, how are you going to call anyone? Yeah, so that's why we have to plan ahead. God forbid something happens, but then there's already a plan in place of how you can get your assistance.
Great. Now, this is a very important subject, and I can relate. There are many others who can also relate. So we're just going to open the phone lines just for a very short time. If you want to talk to the doctors, they're here. You can talk to them and ask what you want to ask. And if you also are confused about something, anything related to the subject, give us a call on 030221169102. Numbers already on your screen, but you have to call us now. So, Dr. Akpalu, I want to ask if we have enough facilities that offer stroke treatment here in our country.
Unfortunately, no. No, we don't. And I think this is a day that we're going to have a press conference at the Ministry of Health from here. And we are praying the ministry, the Ghana Health Service, to help us spread out stroke units across the country. A stroke unit is a place where you can reverse damage. Evidence has shown that being managed in a stroke unit will improve your chances of recovery and will improve your functional independence. Currently, we have only maybe 2-3 functional units in the country. In Accra, in Accra, Kodebu Teaching Hospital, 37. We've done one at Ridge Hospital and one at La General Hospital, which is being under renovation. Convanoche also has one. We have gone around the country last year training people in teams on how to manage stroke, but we need the facilities. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to be a little apolitical. We have 16 regions, only 4 regions have functional CT scans, and it is not acceptable. The diagnosis of stroke needs a CT scan. There are 2 types of stroke. So as Dr. Sarkodie will tell you, if it's an infarct, we give you aspirin. If it's a hemorrhage, we manage it differently. So we need these CT scans across the country, for they are not expensive. So if we are building hospitals, please, Mr. President, add a CT scan to each region. So I'm advocating 1 CT scan per region. coming in 2021. That is my only statement I'll make. 1 CT scan per region. It's not acceptable for you to have a stroke in Oti region or Volta region and have to be driven all the way down to Accra or to Togo to go and have a scan. It is not acceptable. So we as stroke professionals are advocating the country, please get us CT scans in each regional capital. The ones that are not working, get them working. And we have the teams on the ground. We have enough physios. We have training occupational therapists. We have stroke nurses. We have doctors who are willing and ready to join this cause. Stroke is the highest cause of morbidity and mortality in terms of cardiovascular diseases for us. Why do we sit and wait and make things worse? So please, join news. Please advocate. I want to see it on your screen. 1 CT scan per region.
Okay. So Maoli Jivenu is the one writing, and it shows on the screen. Maoli, make sure you write 1 CT scan, 1 region, please.
Region.
Yeah. We've got Ransford. Ransford and Ikea joining us. I'll take you first, Ransford. Ransford is in Sawam. Good morning, Ransford.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, sir. You're on air.
Yes. Please, I wanted to ask the doctor. When I sit on the wall, let me say, I'm sitting on the wall. I feel like strange hardness in one of my legs. Like, I wanted to know, is there symptoms of stroke or what should I do?
Okay. Let me. Okay. All right. Ransford, thank you very much. The doctors will address your question. Let's speak to Ikea. Ikea is in Koforidua.
Hello.
Hello, Ikea. Yes.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, my mom has been complaining of heaviness under her feet on one side of her body. I just want to know if it's a sign of stroke.
Okay. All right, Ikea, thank you very much. And then Dominic has just come on. Dominic from Cape Coast. Hello, Dominic.
Yeah, hello, Mama B.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us. You're on air.
Okay. Please, I want to find out what are some of the symptoms? Just as the doctor is saying that there's no clear symptoms showing that you get a stroke, but at least there are some things that happens inwardly, like the blood pressure. And I want to find out at which stage that when you test, when you go for blood, pressure, at least if you have like 120, 80, or 140, 90, or 150, 90, then there is a symptom showing that you might enter into that age. So I want to find out.
Okay. Please. All right. Thank you very much. We'll speak to Richard, and then we'll hold on with the call so we can address the issues that have come up. Richard is in Bolga. Good morning, Richard. Hello, Richard.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, sir. You're on air. Let's hear you.
Okay. I want to find out. I've seen people from Breast palsy, and people say it is stroke. So I want to be clear.
Richard,
is Breast palsy the same as stroke?
What it is?
Richard, you said you've seen what?
People suffer from Breast palsy.
Okay.
So I want to find out what is the difference between stroke and Breast palsy.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you very much. So we had Ransford, Ikea, Dominic, and Richard.
Okay, I will try and answer the questions. I will group them because a lot of them, the underlying question is this a stroke or is this not a stroke? So for the first question from Ransford, he gave a very particular situation in which he feels what I understood as numbness in his leg, when he's sitting on a wall. That is not a stroke. But before anyone can say this is a stroke, this is not a stroke, the first thing we need to know is who is the person saying they have this complaint or that complaint. For the individual who was asking about what the signs that you are getting a stroke, that is the problem with stroke. There is no sign that you are getting a stroke. There's a sign that you got a stroke. So there's no warning. The same thing with the blood pressure. There is no blood pressure number that is safe compared to another blood pressure number that is not so safe. Normal blood pressure is 120/80. Anything above that requires either monitoring or taking your medication. And so if you say, oh, my blood pressure is only 140/90, I am safe, you're fooling yourself. Because the thing is, high blood pressure, you don't feel it. You feel it only when it has done something to you. So you can be walking around with 200/110 and not know that you have high blood pressure at all. And that is the problem with our population. Nearly 40% of the adult population in Ghana has high blood pressure. The majority have no idea that they have high blood pressure. And that is why, as you reach adulthood, you're supposed to check your blood pressure on a regular basis, have medicals on a regular basis. So the question about the one-sided deficit, it can be a stroke, but it needs to be seen by a medical professional to determine, yes, it's a stroke. The main thing about stroke, and you can almost be certain that this, I'm having a stroke, is sudden change in the way your body functions. Any sudden change in the way your body functions could be a stroke. And that's why when you suddenly notice that something is not right, not it's gradual, it slowly happens over months, over years, nothing like that. A sudden change in the way your body functions, the way you move, the way you feel things, the way you see, the way you speak, that is possibly a stroke.
Okay.
And that's why we keep saying time. It's sudden and you have no time to waste. Get yourself to a medical facility.
Okay. So now we know, Dr. Sarkodie, that we don't have enough stroke centers. But do we have acute stroke services in Ghana?
Mama V, I think you are treading on another dangerous ground because the stroke centers Dr. Kwali is already talking about that we don't have. It's like a second-level stroke center. But to have an acute or hyperacute stroke center where you will be able to do certain interventions to reverse the stroke, currently we don't have a single one in the country. Sometimes we know that because government is burdened by a lot of things, malaria, pneumonias, COVID, and other things, it is difficult to put a lot of money in some of these things. And that is why private sector participation is also very important. And Urake Advanced Diagnosis Center and Heart Center is venturing into this area of trying to set up a hyperacute stroke center where you come within 4 to 6 hours. And I say that deliberately because within 4 hours, there are certain interventions that can be done. And within 6 hours, there are certain interventions also that can be done. So it's important that within 4 to 6 hours, anybody with stroke who wants to reverse some of these things presents to the hospital. And Dr. Akpalu couldn't have put it right that the CT scan is an essential part of the management of stroke.
Is this CT scan different from the other CT scans you find in the hospital? Is there a special one for stroke?
No, the CT scans are the same. And they do the same thing looking into the brain when you have a stroke, because the first thing we want to be able to establish is the cause of the stroke. Is this a bleed or is this a clot? Because the management are quite different. And so it's important to establish the type of stroke that this person has, and then you can administer the treatment. So within the onset of your symptoms to the time you report to the hospital, we want it to be as short as possible so you can even have access to CT scans. And also if there's a need to do any intervention, we'll be able to do this intervention. Some of the interventions these days, we can put catheters, wires into the brain and extract the clots right within this 6 hours. And right there you see the patient improving.
And this can be done here in Ghana?
Next month we are hoping to start this service in Ghana. And of course, like Dr. Kwali again mentioned, training of paramedical staff, because stroke is not just for doctors. It's not just for the neurologists. We are all partners in this. And so there's the need to train some of the nurses, they need to train the physiotherapists and all of them so they can come on board and you have a comprehensive approach to treating the patient.
Okay. So Dr. Akpalu, we don't have enough CT scans. How do we manage it? What have we been doing?
We are trying our best, our possible best to limit the numbers. So somebody has a stroke in Upper East, Upper West region. You have to find an ambulance. They come all the way past Tamale down to Kumasi or to Accra to look for a CT scan and then go back. So within that time, you've lost time. So as Dr. Sarkodie and Dr. Chawe have said, time is brain. If we can reverse the changes, you can get some function back. So we need to manage blood pressure, keep your sugar under control, and start mobilizing. So the theme for this theme is join the movement. And I'm going to challenge Dr. Chawe and Dr. Sarkodie and Mama V yourself to show me some dance moves. So I'm going to start mine. So move, boxing, all kinds of aerobic activities go. So I've done my movement. So you have to move.
We didn't see that. We didn't see you. We didn't see you.
I'll do the Bukom Banku style.
Move.
Yes.
Move. All right. So we do that and we get our movement going. So I think it's imperative that we all join the fight for stroke. Let us know the symptoms of stroke. Somebody said, Bell's palsy is a weakness of your face. In Ghana, they think you've been slapped by a ghost. You can have that type of weakness with stroke as well. So if you see any weakness of your face is twisted to one side, you can't close your eyes, you go to a hospital and a trained professional will help us determine whether it is a Bell's palsy or just a normal facial paralysis or from a stroke. So we need to identify the signs. Let's know the fast. I'm sure you show that before the program ends. Face movement, arm weakness or leg weakness, speech slurred, time, go to hospital. We've added B as well, be fast. B is for balance movement, I is for eyesight, and then the fast follows. So when we see any of these symptoms, please go to hospital. Some of our patients who have hypertension say that they know when their BP is high. There's nothing like that. The brain is ambivariate. You can get a stroke when your BP is low or when your BP is high. So anything across, you need, if you see the signs, please go to hospital.
Okay.
As you're going to hospital, you pray for your libation and anything that you want to do, but please get to hospital because we are getting services to do acute stroke care. You need to get into a stroke unit where a multidisciplinary team of professionals will help.
Okay.
But you can prevent it, as Dr. Chawe has said.
Yeah, Dr. Chawe wants to add something to what you've been
really
talking about.
quickly. The reason why stroke is such a terrible disease to have is not just because you can die from it. It's not just because you can be paralyzed from it. It's the other little things that we take little notice of but make a big difference. So a stroke affects someone who's usually an adult, who's usually the breadwinner of the family. And the worst thing that the stroke can do to you, and it's less noticeable than the weakness that you can get from a stroke, is cognitive impairment. And that is the loss of ability to reason, to think, to make decisions, etc. And so for fear of all these terrible, terrible things that can happen to you, do the best you can. Every individual has to do the best they can to prevent that first stroke.
Great. So finally, what is Eurocare offering, that people can go there?
So basically, like I mentioned, we don't have any acute stroke center in Ghana as yet. What we are trying to do at Eurocare is to pull a team of specialists together, like Dr. Palu, like Dr. Chawe, myself, and many other people, to come together to offer an acute stroke service so that we can help people who are suffering from, or who will be suffering from this condition. Unfortunately, the thing with stroke is that beyond prevention for people who have had it already, the only thing you can do is rehabilitation. But we are trying to offer a chance so that we can reverse it altogether when it happens in the acute situation.
Okay.
So this is what we are trying to get as a team. And it's not a one-man show. It's important that we all work together and ensure that we offer some good services to the people of Ghana.
Great. I see we've been putting the number on the screen to Eurocare, so you can contact and then talk to them some more. Can you explain what we're seeing, doctors?
Okay, so this is for public education, how to spot a stroke. Dr. Akpalu has mentioned it several times. We use the acronym, which means an abbreviation, FAST, where FAST, F in the FAST stands for face. So if you notice, as they say in Ghana, your face has twisted. Yeah, your face has twisted. Arm is, the A is for arm. One arm is weak. Think about a stroke. If the way you speak suddenly changes, that's the S for speech. The speech, you start to have difficulty with it. The T is for time. We keep saying this. Get yourself to the hospital as quickly as possible. So everyone should remember FAST. Face, arm, speech, time.
Okay.
Something is wrong with your face, your arm, your speech, time, get to the hospital.
Well, doctors, thank you very much for having this very important conversation with us here on our show. Dr. Sarkodie, Dr. Chawe, Dr. Akpalu, I'll be our ambassador on the one region, one CT scan.
One CT scan.
Yes. So I'm your ambassador. We should have more conversations on this.
What comes there about that? Yes. Thank you very much. And everybody must dance in the studio. Everybody.
Yeah. Please drop some music so we can dance. Thank you, Dr. Kwame.
Yeah.
Thank you. When we come back, we're talking about breast cancer. You know, it's Pink October. We have our final conversation. Not that we're forgetting about the subject, but we're talking about it. We're bringing it all together. Everything that you've missed in the month of October here on our show. Dr. Salah will be with us. Stay with us. It is indeed a healthy Thursday. We have great health conversations here on our show. Month of October is a Pink October. We've been talking about breast cancer. Last week, Thursday, the concentration was on men. And today we're bringing it all together. If you've missed any of the breast cancer conversations, don't worry, because Dr. Samson Asala, who is general practitioner, Medifem multi-specialist hospital and fertility center, is here to help us go through it all over again. So good morning, Doc, again this week. Thanks for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Did men show up for the screening, or have men shown up after last Thursday's conversation? Have you seen more men?
Yes, I have. And actually, some people have reached out, men who had issues with their breast, they had breast enlargement, and they were wondering what it was. So the word did go out. So people are going to the clinic to have their breast checked. The men. Some women also reached out, but then the men did. And that I think that was really good.
Okay.
That was really good.
All right. We even need some more men to show up because there's free screening.
Yes.
Pretty much in a lot of centers.
Yes. There are so many hospitals in this month of October that are offering free clinical breast examinations. At Medifem, for example, we do it every Monday and Friday.
Okay, so
from 9 to 3. So tomorrow, anybody can come in and have their breast examined for free.
Okay. All right, so let's go over what we want people to pay attention to in this month of October as we talk about breast cancer. So where are you going to start from?
Right. So I want to start with a story. So I have, this year, I've had 2 friends whose mothers have passed away from breast cancer. For one of them, very close, whose mother discovered changes in the breast last year, and she saw it, thought it was the change in the breast, didn't mind it. It was the daughter who saw it and prompted her that, "Mommy, what is happening here? You should have it checked out." Mommy was like, "No, she doesn't want to do anything about it. She'll just pray." And they kept talking to her. So I was called in to speak to her, and I told her that, "Oh, Mommy, the way it is, let's just go and have it checked. Let's just have it checked." There was some reluctance, but eventually she went to the clinic. At the time she went to the clinic, the cancer had spread.
Oh.
The cancer had spread to a point where she needed chemotherapy, she needed radiation, and for some time it seemed like we were winning. There was a sore that developed, cancers can do that, a sore developed, and later on we had to do surgery. So at some point in time, we felt like we were winning because she was much better. She was more active. We did not see the lesion, and we thought that we had won. But a few weeks to months later, we saw that a sore started forming where the cut was. So there's no breast there, just a scar. But then the sore started forming. So that tells us that we couldn't get everything.
Oh.
We couldn't get everything, and that is the sad part. You know, breast cancer affects women, especially in their 50s and their 60s, older women. And what happens then is that, you know, mothers give a lot for their children. Mothers at that age are more concerned about their children's health than theirs. And so it is sad because I have felt it. I see a mother who has toiled and is at a point where she's about to realize all the fruit of her labor. Her children are about to get married, give birth. She's about to see her grandchildren. You see all the excitement there as a young woman when your mother is there to help you take care of your child. And then this thing happens.
Yeah.
And it takes a toll. Apart from the financial toll, even emotionally, it becomes very difficult because you see your mother going through this. You worry about how she is going to, and you know that it's not going to be possible going forward for your mother to be there to take care of your child. And that's the part of it that is worrying for me. Because mothers in their 50s, in their 60s, it is time for them to reap what they have sown into their children. You see, and children is a time that you need your mother's support in a time, you know, you are now starting your family. It's so important that, oh, your mother is around, the children have their grandmother and all that. So when this thing starts, it is so devastating. Yeah. It is so devastating. And that is why we keep talking about it. And that is why every year we will continue, because till every mother starts doing the screening, starts doing annual or biennial, that means every year or every 2 years, doing a mammogram, having the breast checked, we will have these stories. And when it hits close to home, you feel it. And it's always sad when you wonder, oh, so I could have done something about it. I mean, I heard the conversation earlier about stroke, and the doctors told you that stroke, you can do something about it. When it comes to the point where you look back and you're like, if I had known, that is the sad part.
Yeah.
That is the sad part. If I had known. And so even though we are telling mothers out there, women out there to do the breast exam, I want to talk especially to children, you know, those who are in their 20s, even their teenage years. Tell your mother, you know, at this point, they may be busy going around trying to do things to make you happy, but sit them down and tell them, Mommy, I heard on the news that this thing is important. I don't want something happening to you. Please get your breast checked. Please go and do the screening. Because otherwise, Mommy is busy. She's going to the market. She's going to the shop. She's going to work. She's doing everything to make you comfortable. But if we find it out today and we do something today, we can save it, and then in the end there'll be smiles instead of tears.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the mammogram is done twice a year, you said?
No, so mammogram is done either once a year or once every 2 years.
Okay.
So usually it starts every year, then after some time we increase it to every 2 years. The guidelines differ. Now there are so many medical organizations that have come together to try and see how best can we identify breast cancer early and what can we do. So they use evidence to say that, okay, let's do this every year or every 2 years. So some will say that do it every year, and others will say do it every 2 years.
Okay.
And then for some, you start every year and then you transition to every 2 years.
Okay.
But the mammogram should be started from about, definitely by 50, you should be doing mammogram. But some have it earlier by your 45. So personally, what I recommend is that just like we tell all men that from the age of 40, you should make sure you check your prostate, do prostate test, and then do the examination. Then the same for women. From 40, you should make sure that you do your annual clinical breast exam, and then you do your mammogram, so that we pick it up early.
What's the difference between the breast examination and the mammogram?
All right, so anybody at home can take a rule and try and see what a millimeter is. A millimeter is a very tiny size. A millimeter is so small. Now, with the clinical breast exam, there are limits to how much we can feel. Okay, when a breast cancer starts, the last time we said it's abnormal growth of cells. The cell is very tiny, microscopic. So by the time it gets to even a centimeter, it means that there's so many billions of cells, right? Now, when the cell starts as 1, when it is less than a millimeter, we can pick it up with a mammogram. So mammogram detects it earlier than we can feel.
Okay.
In fact, you can pick early breast cancer on a mammogram up to even a year before we start feeling it. Now, we are saying that the earlier we detect it, the easier it is to treat, and then the less the complications. It means that if we do mammogram, then we can pick it up so much earlier that it will be like just a small procedure, nothing major, and we'll not have the instances where we think that we have one and then later on, oh, it had actually spread.
Okay. Yeah. Is this a painful procedure?
No, it's not. It's not. So the mammogram is a type of X-ray. Now, because the breast tissue has no bone in it, the kind of radiation used in a mammogram is very, very limited. X-rays use something called radiation so that we can see through the structures. You know, you cannot see, as I'm looking at my hand, I can't see the bone. But radiation goes through it, right? Now, with things like bone, you need a certain level of that radiation. But with the breast, there's no bone, so you reduce it to the barest minimum.
Okay.
So that we can see small signs of the cancer starting up. So it is just like you go and have X-ray, they put something on your chest or your leg. So in the same way, they do it on your breast. So they'll put your breast in a particular X-ray conformation so that we can see if there's any sign that something is starting up.
Okay.
It is not painful. It may be a bit uncomfortable. Obviously, you are naked and they are putting on the breast. It's uncomfortable, but then the benefits far outweigh the discomfort that we'll feel.
Okay. Let's also talk about care when you have breast cancer. How do you care for yourself?
Okay. So if we are unfortunate and we do not pick it up early, and we get to a point where it is detected and we need to do something about it, there are so many things that go into care. There's a medical aspect, and then there is care that is provided psychologically. Okay. Now, the medical aspects, we've mentioned some of them. We talked about the testing that is done, because once we feel a lump or we see something, we go ahead to do some testing to define the particular tissue, the particular type, to know what kind of treatment it is. Then we start treatment. So surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. Now, all these treatments by themselves can cause problems. The last time I mentioned that cancers are rapidly dividing cells. And in the normal human being too, we have rapidly dividing cells. Some of these rapidly dividing cells are your red blood cells, the one that takes oxygen around your body and all those things. So if you are giving chemo, for example, then it means that even as it is targeting the bad cancer cells, there is the collateral damage on your good red blood cells. And when your red blood cells are down, you get anemia. Anemia means that you'll be tired, you'll not be able to do the things that you normally do. So you see that somebody who is on chemo is not able to do the work that she normally does or he normally does. Is not able to, he easily gets tired, walks a little bit, and then the heart is beating fast. Yeah. And then you also are at risk of infections. So in addition to providing these, in a chemotherapy unit or in a breast cancer management unit, we look at these known complications and how we can help. But apart from this is what we'll do in the clinic. Now, in the home, it's important that you realize that this is a condition, this is what it entails, and these are some of the side effects. Because for the majority of people that I have seen in my practice who have breast cancer, they have some level of depression. They have some level of depression. They begin to wonder, hey, what did I do wrong? You know, for those who know that it is something detectable, they begin to blame themselves for not going to detect it early, you know, and then they begin to think, what happens if my if I go, my children? And so all those concerns give them some depression. So it's important in the household that we know these things.
Okay.
And try and lift up the mood. Yes, it is a diagnosis that needs to worry, but we shouldn't make it a burden. We shouldn't make it a weight on the mother, on the woman or the man who has breast cancer, to try and make the living condition better. And also, if you know this, there are some kind of work around that you will limit it.
Okay.
I mean, there's no point in letting a mother with breast cancer do all the house chores that she usually would do, because we need to understand and be empathetic, know what the condition entails, and what it means to help out the way that you can.
Okay.
Help out the way that you can.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you're breastfeeding and you discovered a lump, should you discontinue breastfeeding?
Okay, so in breastfeeding women, there are conditions that cause a lumpy feeling. It is something that we know in breastfeeding women. So if you are breastfeeding and you have a lump, it's best that you go to the clinic, because I'm sure some women have had what is called breast engorgement, or in some cases mastitis. They'll feel like there's pain and then there's a lump in their breast, right? If you go to the hospital and say, oh, this is what it is, in that case, breastfeeding actually helps.
Okay.
It helps to dislodge it, and it helps in the treatment of that condition. If you go and we figure out that it is breast cancer, then we'll go through the motions. We'll have to do the testing, try and see what stage we are in and what we need to do. In most cases, we may have to stop breastfeeding.
Okay.
But because of the similarity when it comes to lump in a breastfeeding woman, because it may be the normal caused by accumulation of breast milk in some ducts, as opposed to the cancerous one, it's important we check, because indeed the approaches are different. In one, we'll say go and breastfeed. Yet I would say don't breastfeed.
Okay.
So we need to check and show which one it is.
Okay. Do men also do the mammogram?
Yes, men can also do the mammogram. It's I must say that personally, I have not seen a man with a mammogram here in Ghana.
Okay.
Yes, but men also can do the mammogram.
Okay.
Yes.
Cost for the mammogram, typically.
Right. So the good thing about October is that because of the increased awareness, most places will reduce the cost of doing the mammogram. Outside October, usually it's a bit expensive. It may range about 200 or something cedis. But then for most places, in the month of October, they are reducing the cost of the mammogram.
Okay.
So this is the best time to take advantage of it. And indeed, every October, I am sure there are some organizations I know that make it a point to reduce it so that they can help detect. Because it's not only about the profit. They have this social advocacy to try and reduce it. So in the month of October, some places have reduced it by 50%. So that would be in a range of 100 cedis for a mammogram. So if you can do it, then this month we have maybe 48 hours or so, but you can have it done so that in this time we can detect.
Okay. Do you need like a special conversation before you go and do it? You know, would they have to prepare you for what you're about to do? Or you just walk in and have it done?
Well, because like I'm saying, in October, you can just walk in, and then once you have a request for a mammogram, you can have it done. I'm sure even some places you can just go and request for the mammogram.
Okay.
So that it's
I doubt the national insurance will cover that.
As of now, no.
Okay.
As of now, no. It doesn't cover. As far as I know, it doesn't cover.
Okay.
Yes.
So just your final thoughts on this whole breast cancer conversation from your experience as well. What would you leave on the minds of our viewers?
Okay. So the most important thing I think people should know is that if we detect breast cancer early, we can prevent a lot of problems. And detecting it early is easily available. You can do the clinical breast exam every year. We can do the mammogram. They all pick it up early because I have seen the toll it can have. And it's not something that I wish on anybody. So let's go out, let's do it. All women who are 40 and above, do your detection, your mammogram, your examination. Even below 40, they should still do the clinical breast exam. And then tell the women in your life, your sisters, your mothers, your aunties, everyone who is close, ask them if they have done it. You know, sometimes they're so busy. So ask them if they have done the breast exam and make sure that they do it. All right.
Yeah. The last thing we'll leave is the contact number if you want to talk to our doctor or you want to talk to the hospital where he's coming from, which is Medifem Multi-Specialist Hospital and Fertility Center. Dr. Samson Asala, I am very grateful.
Thank you.
Maybe in the future we can talk about other health conditions as well, because usually we are accused that, oh, you spend so much time talking about breast cancer in October and very little time talking about other conditions as well. So we should talk about other conditions in the future.
We will.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too.
All right. So up next, we're joining Benjamin Akapo. He's live from Dansoman Hansonic Junction to take a look at the bad roads and its impact on the people. You can see in your shots. Over to you, Benjamin.
Hello, Mama V. Well, can you hear me, Mama V? Well, I shall just go ahead, and we are here, we're live this morning from the Hansonic traffic light, leading from Odoko into Hansonic and moving on to Dansoman. And it's become a perennial situation. In fact, historically, when you go back in time, all the way from 1955, as records cover them, you can talk about 1960, 63, all the way into the 2000s, we've always grappled with the issue of flooding. Yesterday, it rained in most parts of Accra for less than an hour. But this is the result. We are at the main Hansonic traffic light, and as you can see, a lot of vehicles struggling to come from the Odoko end towards Hansonic. You can see from here as well what a hurdle it is to actually navigate these waters. The roads are already bad, and now they have to navigate through the waters to get to wherever these people are commuting to. It also poses quite a danger to people who may actually be walking through these floodwaters, attempting to cross the street. Now, this is the situation. In fact, it is so bad that just a few years ago, there was a Canadian citizen who made quite a bit of money betting on flooding in Accra. In fact, in 2015, this anonymous citizen of Canada actually bet $10,000 on the fact that the hashtag Accra floods would trend. And guess what? He won his bet, getting over $23,000 as a result. So this is the situation from here, and it begs the question, what have we learned 63 years down the line as a nation? What have we learned when it comes to flooding, how to tackle it? What exactly are the changes, for example, with regard to our drainage systems? And those who live in flood-prone, neighborhoods, areas, what has been done for them? When are they going to get any respite? You can see from the other stretch right there how vehicles, even big vehicles, are struggling to get through the water because it is pretty treacherous. So we're live here at Hansonic, and I'm going to move over now, Mama V, and interact with some members of this community. In fact, some taxi drivers who have accepted to speak to us this morning. I'm just going to do that and hear from them because they are also gravely affected. So there's a taxi station right here, and I'm going to be interacting with some of those who are actually here at the station. I'll start with this gentleman. Morning, oh.
Good morning.
No akasa de amaye why? Pacho bradim kakra. Yentumi hu. Where you joy news? Pacho e from saying?
Pacho from Kwesiba.
Kwesiba?
Yeah.
Ejuma be na where wa ha?
Ejuma me a driver.
Where driver? Where uchika e won potemu yi. How many years ni?
Me ba say 1992.
1992.
Yeah.
Teacher say when the Fourth Republic no e na e boso.
Me pa chan.
Na nsuo tower ha. Eya mo sen na mo hu no.
Esuo ni de eto a ya kra me timba ji rake e wa ha. E de ye adwuma se de be ya nsuo no e betimi atwam. Da so ya enkosi hwe. Bra ha na be hwa de.
So he's indicating that they've spoken about this matter time and again when it comes to flooding. In fact, sometimes when it rains, they have to perform certain antics in order to be able to keep working. It's pretty treacherous walking in this area. And we're just doing this to get you live action about what exactly the members of the community go through when the rains actually hit. And so he's actually taking us through to see what exactly happens when the rains actually hit. So we're walking along, we're still walking along, we're still walking along. We actually got flushed with water at a point. Enti I say den poti nesi amna bi wahana.
Amra no mo de anwa begu so nansen a. Ba so nsan to e no atwe anwa ni nyina san ko back.
Enti che say ni omo be ye no ankosi aga. How many months ni no omo de anwa no begu so.
Omo de anwa no begu so me fa say me fa say 2 weeks 1 week ni.
By 1 week in here.
Yeah.
Pacho, now we have someone who's in a vehicle and he has some comments to express. Why do you say your friend saying?
My friend me kwesi da ho. Me oda kuma ha. Ya tell for so many years. E kwani say anet here. Enti be say busa say kroma yan ka Ghana one ha.
Enti dan na opese ye fa ho.
Eso mo ye ni ye. It's very simple. Get your road where you tax and so where the kroma here there. And so in trompe you just say ministers o mo twa mo free akota kwade ne ade no. O mu se kwade ne. Omani tia pass, omu twam de bia ping-pong. Omu kura Land Cruiser nti. Ye de ni Land Cruiser. Na omu twam. Adan, oma be ne wo mu no. Ebe ya momi nto ma na brofo no na brofo me dia so biom. Ne ya bre. Ya da mo ase.
Well, you heard from some members of the community here, and we're going back to the taxi driver, but all of them saying that what is happening here is not the best of situations, that when it comes to the road network, it is already bad, and when the rains add up, it becomes a terrible situation. And to say, you know, send ya nema, you know, more taxi drivers than as for more person more faha, more breastfeeding, you know, then more persesi.
Say, and the SAC ni say, a queer free, on an affairs or MP, or ha. A quan we saying, and ya quan be a, omo yama.
So that is a location report from right here, Hansonic, the Odoko Dansoman stretch. On the back of yesterday's rains. Now, it didn't rain for long, but look at exactly what the situation is. You can only imagine what would have happened if it had rained for longer. Well, so that is the location report from here. Benjamin Akako reporting from Hansonic. I'm handing over now to Mapito Sibidi, who brings us showbiz. Over to you.
The National Film Authority Action Group has petitioned President Akufo-Addo through the Tourism Ministry to open cinemas across the country. According to them, this is to enable the film industry kickstart its processes of recovering after it was hit badly by the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we read the petition, let's listen to some movie lovers to see what they had to say about the closure of cinemas.
I think cinemas should be open because come to think of it, some of the politicians are using the same cinemas for their programs, and crowd also go there. So I don't think it is right to allow people to go there and watch movies too, because you can't only use that site for only your politics and stuff, but you can also use that same place for movies. So I think it should be open for other people to also go and watch movies.
The government did us right. One, cinema is a place where we go to watch movies, and moreover too, we all have telly in our house. We can just sit at home and watch the telly we want. We have Netflix too. Any movies that you want to watch, you can watch it. Right now, he's putting things in place for us to be safe from COVID-19. So I think what he has done is right. It's the right thing.
No, cinemas is a realization center. Cinemas is a place you can meet connections. Cinemas is a place where people go and gather, fellowship, have fun. For instance, if it should be closed, what else do you want us to do? Note, entertainment, music, cinema, all those things are medicine to the soul.
All right, so let's take some excerpts of that petition. Now, they say we have carefully evaluated the potential spread of the virus at our cinemas, and the attached risk assessment shows the residual rating as safe for reopening. So we propose an online booking system which will allow us to track and trace our customers. They also gave some guidelines for that. So washing of hands, wearing of masks, and they'll also play videos, Mama Vin, they'll play some videos to teach and educate the cinema goers and theatre lovers and movie lovers about COVID-19.
I'm wondering though, since people are not shooting new movies, obviously because of the coronavirus, what would people be watching in the cinemas?
So, for example, Peter Sedolfia shot a movie just before the lockdown, and it wasn't able to, go on air. So, I mean, people like that, and a few movies have been there because they were saying that at the cinemas you don't take off your mask, but at the drinking spots you take off your mask. So I mean,
you can still social distance in the cinemas.
In the cinemas, yes.
Well, that's a legitimate
concern.
Exactly. Yeah. But one of my favorite, superheroes, if you like, Wonder Woman. That movie was supposed to be, shown, but then obviously because of coronavirus, that's also been delayed.
Yeah. So there are many movies to be shown.
Okay, Maps, thank you so much for show business. You know where to go for more news. myjoyonline.com. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing. Let's wrap up the week beautifully on the AM Show. See you soon.